Brill. So hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to this edition of Lancs Can Lunch and Learn. So today we've got our colleagues Cara and maybe Rob, who are from the new Nature Towns and Cities project, which is happening across Blackpool, and they're going to take us through their work, the project, and potentially how other groups can also get involved. So I'll hand over to Cara, and if you've got any questions, we'll be doing some Q&A at the end. Thanks, Cara.
Hello. So I'm just going to take control and share my screen with you. I've got a presentation, which is, let's find it. Okay. You have to bear with me. I was just explaining my camera on my laptop isn't working, so I've now got you logged in on my phone so you can see me, and on here on my laptop as well to do the presentation, which is fun trying to maneuver. Going to work. I'll just have to flick through it as it is, I think, because it's not, I can't, yeah. Here we go. So Blackpool's Greenwave, it's been a joint bid that was put in with Groundwork and with Blackpool Council, and the bid was put in last year and was received, I think, in November, and since then there has been obviously a period of recruitment, which now holds myself and my colleague Louise, who is a job share. So I'm the in community engagement, and we have a conservation officer as well, Rob, who may well be joining us at some point. We are now recruiting for 2 new members of staff. So we've also got an ecologist position that's out for recruitment and a trainee conservation officer. So obviously share those. They are that would be great to get any more applications from people in. It's been very well received. So I'll just go into the background of what Greenwave is and what Blackpool hopes Greenwave and the Nature Towns and Cities Fund will bring to the town. So the Greenwave project, it's part of the Nature Towns and Cities fund. So 19 successful projects across the UK. We are funded until June 2028, at which point we're hoping that we will have established some funding pipelines to continue the work that's happening in Blackpool, so that we can build that project moving forward into what Blackpool hopes will be a 10-year and beyond project. So there is national support with the Nature Towns and Cities. It's built around lots of community engagement, lots of change on the ground, but above that is the systems change to green and blue infrastructure and capacity building for Blackpool, and hopefully securing assets and securing a greater look at the GBI for our town. So a little bit about the Nature Towns and Cities. I'm not going to obviously go through, but it's a coalition, and there's loads of different partners involved. The funding comes from multiple areas, but it's again focusing on nature and green infrastructure and bringing it into towns and cities, obviously towns like Blackpool. And I'm going to skip through to this one first, actually. So a little bit of a background about Blackpool. So as you're aware, Blackpool is a tourist town, a wonderful seaside resort, but is really, really lacking in its green offerings, let's say. There are a few wonderful sites. We are very lucky to have a triple SI in Blackpool. We've got heritage sites in Blackpool.
Where's my sound?
But overall, our kind of tree cover is 4%. So obviously, in comparison to the national average, though the hope of the national average of 16%, it's incredibly low. It's a very densely populated area, and sadly lots of green infrastructure has been left out of planning for our town. We've lost a lot over the years. Our coastal sea defences have changed things because they've put flood defences in and they're changing the landscape of our coastline. However, we know we need to do a lot of work on developing the areas away from the coast. So I'm just going to flip back to this one here. So what we're hoping to achieve is developing a greener image and culture for Blackpool, because it's not really associated. We often say, like, people will go up to the top of the tower and they can see this wonderful vista of, you know, seaside and beaches and the ocean, and it's wonderful. But however, if you turn the other way, away from the coast, there are tiny little pockets of green spaces. We have one really well received and beautiful park, but other than that, there are so little opportunities for people to get out and about and improve health. You know, thinking about habitats and places for pollinators and for natural spaces for animals to live. We are very, very limited. So we're hoping to develop that, obviously, for climate, for nature, but for the people as well in our town, for health and well-being, because it's a really deprived town where people struggle. I'll flip back to this one. I'll just give you the statistics off here. So 4 hectares of open space per 1,000 people, which is the standard. However, ours is incredibly low, and it's a real sad state of affairs, and we're aware that there are decisions being made for the future of Blackpool which are hopeful and will integrate more green space and give people a better access to green spaces. So through our project so far, so we were recruited in March, and since then we've kind of been going through this mapping phase of trying to understand what Blackpool has to offer. I've worked in Blackpool. I'm from Blackpool. I have worked in green spaces for the past 10 years. I worked as a park ranger with our local park service, and I've worked in education. I was a primary school teacher before that, and I'm well aware of the issues that we have. So I've come to this with quite a good understanding of what our town's needs are. But when we've gone out and about and looked at the actual things that are happening in our town, we've been amazed at how much activity is actually going on, how many groups there are out there, how many people that are interested in protecting our green spaces. What we're now trying to develop is giving those people a voice and giving those people an opportunity to take custodianship of the green space and the blue space in Blackpool, because they desperately want it, and they're aware and they understand the importance of developing it for Blackpool. So the barriers that we faced, I'll just flick onto this one. So capacity and confidence is one thing. Groups are small. We have lots of friends of groups in the parks in Blackpool. I think currently there's 19 established groups, which is great. However, they are generally made up of small numbers. So what we're hoping to do is develop those friends groups and subsequently develop plans to green up their parks, to introduce different habitats in their parks. But we know we need to build the capacity first. Skills gaps. So part of our fund is for training. So we're really lucky that we've got a really healthy budget for training. So we're going to be working on volunteer recruitment. We're going to be developing skill sets by maybe bringing in external trainers. Currently, Rob is we're planning a traditional meadow management kind of training opportunity. He's been and done the training, and we're now developing that to deliver those things to members of the public and to people who want to join in and do traditional mowing with us. Governance is a massive thing. There's very different messages being sent, let's say, from authority, from different friends groups. So what we're trying to do is develop a cohesive volunteer package, so that the governance, so that they can establish groups in a more cohesive way, they can access funding. So those complex needs that they have individually are, I suppose, more concise, and that those handbooks or those instructions or support mechanisms are more cohesive and I suppose standardized across the board, so that everybody accessing or wanting to access a volunteer opportunity or access to green space has the same message. We're also trying to develop partnerships with people. We understand the need to partner up with people to help with the sustainability of these projects, because we don't just want them to be for 1 or 2 years. We're trying to look at our projects with the impact and the legacy of a 50-year plan or a 100-year plan of what these things are going to look like, you know, long into the future once we're gone, and for generational change. So practical barriers is another thing. Again, going back to the trying to introduce training, access to tools. We're considering like a tool bank where people can access, where we could have a shared store of tools for people to be able to use and hire out, or, you know, borrow, however that might look in the future. And then one of the points on here is a fragmented delivery. So again, talking about those disjointed messages that are coming across. Blackpool has lots of different volunteer organisations. One of them sits within the council, one of them as a volunteer opportunity as a general council. One of them is also held within the Park Service. And then we also have a really excellent service, which is a volunteer organisation. So we're trying to bring those groups together so we can partner up with them and make things more cohesive. So the other thing I mentioned was investable pipeline that we're working towards. So linking up with partners, thinking about budgets and how we can access grants and funds together, putting in bids for, you know, future projects to establish themselves, working with those our ward councillors to kind of secure part of their, you know, annual budget would be excellent. Something else we're now talking to the council about is our BNG credits, and trying to get the kind of custodianship of the people managing the land being those volunteer groups that we're working with, so that again they've got that ownership and onus to feel confident about the security that with a BNG credit being 30 years, you know, like a 30-year developmental plan, that they can get on board with. Because I feel like sometimes when projects are funded for 1, 2, 3 years, the buy-in is quite tricky. The buy-in and the confidence that people have with making that change is tricky, because things, as we're aware, take a lot, you know, sometimes can take a long time to change. And that's what we're hoping with the BNG credits and securing those, that we could have a longer term plan. I'll flick through to the next one. So then we've got our conservation activity. So as I said, we've been looking at lots of different ways to increase biodiversity in Blackpool, habitat development, and working on sites that are already existing. So we have, I mentioned before about Triple Aside, that we have a beautiful natural wetland in Blackpool. And what we're trying to do is link people up with those existing ones, but develop new. So the grey areas in Blackpool, the concrete areas in Blackpool, so retrofitting opportunities to develop habitats, whether it's, you know, through planters, or we're talking about pop-up parks, we're looking at moving forests. There's so much scope for us, but sadly we do have to consider that it will mostly be retrofit at this point. We're working with our town planners and with our local partners in the council, which is Active Blackpool, to develop cycling routes or active travel routes. So for the future, for implementing greener and more diverse landscape for our town, to be a more pleasant place to be around, and obviously develop a natural space for people to be. Okay, so first of all, so we've got conservation activity. We've started looking at what we already have. We've been doing baseline assessments. We've been visiting local green spaces that are already there, parks included, blue spaces. So some of the surveys we've done have been beach led. Most have been on some of our, we've got a pond trail and small brooks and dikes where we've been assessing for bat roosts, for botanical assessment. We've been working alongside lots of our local volunteers and local experts who have an excellent knowledge of the town and have got a really good historic surveying. They've been doing it for many, many years. Some of the volunteers that we have are, community engaged people have been surveying Blackpool for 30, 40 years. So they've got a really good understanding and baseline for that. So we're working with them and trying to pool our information and map and develop those maps for the future. We're working with the council at the moment to develop an invasive strategy. There is one currently, but in Blackpool, our maintenance for green space is outsourced to an arm's length company. So it doesn't sit within the council, and those relationships are quite tricky. So this partnership work, we're becoming increasingly more aware of the challenges that is going to. Well, it's already flagging challenges up, trying to have those conversations about plans for the future. And I feel like these initial stages, although they are a challenge, the future, if we can get this right now and we can get these maps right now and this surveying correct and start to develop management plans for the future, if we can get those relationships right now in this initial 2-year period, the impact that's going to have on planning for Blackpool is immense. So we're working really carefully on our relationships and developing our relationships with the Park Service and with the Enveco, who are the local kind of grounds maintenance for our green and blue spaces. So flip to this next one. Does that come up? Yeah. So luckily we've got Rob, who is our conservation officer, and he has worked in Blackpool for many years. He has a really good understanding of what Blackpool has to offer. He previously worked in the climate team as well, so he's come to this with lots of experience and lots of knowledge, and based on our previous experience and surveys and things that we've done in the town, people tend to disassociate Blackpool with nature, and they see it as a town of not being very biodiverse, although they might love the opportunity to be in a green or a blue space. They wouldn't think of going into Blackpool to see one or to be in one, and people would tend to drive into more rural areas. However, we're aware that there is an opportunity to visit them in Blackpool currently, but certainly that we can develop them. So we're looking at we have started already with some sessions, educational sessions. We've been doing bat walks, we've been doing bio blitzes, trying to get people, engaged and interested and raise the awareness that there are already lots of wonderful spaces in Blackpool that we do need to protect. We've also been trying to work in places that are less biodiverse, but still do these surveying and nature walks in those grey areas that are not as appealing, just to demonstrate that there is still nature there, that once people can see it and identify it, and that it's in every street, it's just we want to develop a greater place. And we already have done. We've started to work with our naturalists. People have been mapping and been adding to our map and adding to our surveys. And it's really sparked an interest in people in just local residential streets. Kids have been involved. We've done some nature walks, and it's really sparked lots of interest. that we knew was there, but it's just really warming and positive for us to see that people want to be involved. The next phase for us, we are hoping to continue promoting what we're doing through various things. So promoting the things that we've already got. As I said, the triple SI that we've got protected areas, we've got our dunes, we've got our wetlands. So we've been working with the Ribble Wire Trust to partner up with them to consider flood defences, tree planting, again with the invasives, protecting those waterways, and linking up with local bird clubs. And as the little comment at the bottom there, those places are often seen as very separate to Blackpool as a whole, and is not as visible as we'd like it to be. So we've been doing some promotion. We've had a survey. A couple of surveys actually. One of the surveys went out to people as a whole, because what we're trying to understand is who is using our green spaces, which green spaces are the most well used, and what we've discovered so far is that people are, I suppose, they're finding some of the parks and local amenities are a little bit lackluster, that although they enjoy being there are issues with antisocial behaviour, there's issues with the diversity of plants, that there might not be a shady spot for them to sit in, and it's been very helpful for us to get a deeper look at that. So we're going to be continuing with our surveys. Again, we've been looking at the meadow management, which we've started as a pilot on one site. We're going to be kind of bringing that into other areas of the town, which have larger, more suitable areas to be managed as a meadow. And then we've started with a Facebook page, which we've just done. We've been having, again, volunteers days, volunteer weeks, trying to get people on board. And then going to flip to this next one. So what's next? So we're committed to looking at the GBI. We're working again very close. So we have monthly meetings with our local authority, with the people mainly in parks, but certainly with the people that are doing the maintenance on the green and blue spaces, and we're having quite open, sometimes quite challenging and difficult conversations with them, because we're trying to highlight, and I mean they are aware of the issues, but it's trying to encourage people to see this, that if we don't make these changes now and we're not trying to work towards something imminently, the effect and the impact of not looking after our green and blue spaces is really quite grave, because our statistics, as I showed you at the start, are quite dire. So it's crucial that we do it now, and if we don't give these chance, to plant now, to give our habitats a chance to establish, whilst we've got the chance before well, we've just been assessing our local parks, and they are just completely baked because they're so exposed. There's not enough tree cover on our parks at all, and if you think of it, obviously now, in another 20-30 years time, it's, instead of trying to think of planting now and just developing those habitats now, again, it's just going to be in a worse state. So volunteers are hugely important to what we're doing, hugely important to green spaces anyway. Our council funding for maintenance of green space is very, very minimal. They don't have the capacity at all to work. We used to have in Blackpool greenhouses on Stanley Park, our local park. We used to have a plant nursery. We used to have a tree nursery. Sadly, funding cuts have obliterated that. And whilst the chance of that being re-established is very, very low, what we are aware of is that there are loads and loads of people who want to protect these green spaces, and we want them to be across the board, young people, generationally invested people. In my previous role, when I worked with the Park Ranger Service, there was a climate action group, a youth climate action group, and they were incredible. So, you know, the young people who really are the ones that we're hoping to, I suppose, take this change forward and get invested, they are starting to have a bit of a voice. And on here there is, Bloomberg have just brought in or been granted a fund to Blackpool to develop a climate action, well, I suppose, a network for young people. So they are putting in they're bidding for small grants at the moment to develop projects, small projects, large projects, but it could be that it's a recycling project or a planting project. But it's great to see that Blackpool are supporting this. So lots of those changes are starting to happen. We are going to be looking at a handbook, like I mentioned at the start, where it holds all volunteers in green spaces, whether that's an alleyway project that someone wants to do, whether it's a planter project that they want to do on, you know, railings, you know, filling up wellies with soil, whatever it is. We're hoping that all of those groups can sit under one kind of umbrella and be protected in one space. And that they can access funding and access resources quite readily. And then corporate volunteering, we're already in touch, and we've had DWP working with us on site because they have a really good volunteering system where they can utilise hours and take a day out. I think it's 10,000 hours they want to achieve. But they've been out a couple of times to come and help with conservation of a couple of the local green spaces we have, and we're continuing that. We're working with our local college. So our local college it's broken up into different campuses, and the one that where we have we have a pond trail, and there is a college within 100 meters of that green space, and we've linked up with them since we started the project. So right back in March, we did a couple of conservation days up at the pond trail, and the college kind of showed a bit of interest, and since then it's gone from strength to strength, incredibly so that the college have now developed, they've actually just agreed a new course they've signed they've started to be able to talk about this openly because it's been agreed, that they have developed a new course for conservation. So the current course that they offer there is an animal management course, and those are the students who are coming to support us with the conservation. But based on their interactions with the site and with the kind of conservation on the days when we've been there with them, they've developed a whole course for conservation, and now they're reaching out to local businesses and organisations and trying to think about job security for Blackpool, for these students to go into jobs. So conservation jobs in smaller organisations, in local authority. So sadly, Blackpool Council doesn't even have, they contract in an ecologist and a conservation officer to the authority because they don't have one of their own. We're aware that they've now, based on these conversations, it's been put on their agenda that they're going to be recruiting those two job types so that they can be within the council. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing is, although it's slow process, the conversations are positive, having a positive impact on decisions being made for the town. So the college one, they've established a new course, and they're going to be creating a management plan for the pond trail. So whereas before it was a member of staff, sadly she retired, and the funding is not accessible to have somebody recruited solely for that site. So we do go there once a week, but the college are now going to be taking ownership of that management, and they're developing a management plan as part of their course and delivering that. And they are also going to be working with, because it sits on a large housing estate, and they're going to be working alongside the local residents to do their own volunteer days. So it's a really amazing outcome already in such a short space of time, you know, since March when we first started. To think that this is going to be launching in September is amazing. So let's flip to this one. Now we've got pipelines. So the funding pipelines, we're aware that our funding is limited to the 2 years initially. We're hoping to extend our project, but however that works, what we want to do is secure further funding for green and blue space in Blackpool, because the local authority hasn't got the budget to put into it. So we're looking at BNG credits. We're working closely to develop a strategy to help have, you know, local community groups, instead of outsourcing those to businesses to maintain the sites. We would love for local people to take ownership of those spaces and protect them for the future. And I think that's just about it. Sorry for waffling on everybody. I've covered everything. I feel like I have managed to get everything in there. But okay, thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, Cara.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, Cara. That was so interesting to hear all about your project. Sounds, yeah, very varied, very ambitious, but sounds like you're already getting on and having some great outcomes. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions they'd like to raise their hands. We did have a question in the chat about what BNG is. So I was just wondering if you could give a quick overview on BNG, if possible.
So it's biodiversity net gain. So each kind of plot of space has a kind of you can access a credit or a share of a credit, and the credit depends on what that landscape has to offer. So it could be that it is just grassland. It could be that there are, you know, waterways on there, and the value of the credit increases depending on how you or what is on the site. They are secure, so it's an agreement. Once you get a credit, you get funded for the credit for 30 years, and the agreement will last for 30 years. And the agreement is supposed to, there will be surveys, and you have to promise and prove that you are increasing the diversity on that space or within that the space that's been credited. So it might start off as a grassland, and then you might introduce, you know, some, you know, a water feature. It could be turned into a meadow, but I suppose it's the wonderful thing in it is that it is that long-term security for that site. But you have to promise that you will, and you have to prove that you have improved that site over the course of the 30 years.
Brill. Thanks, Cara. Helen, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Cara. That's been really interesting. It sounds fantastic, and I would agree, much needed for Blackpool. I was interested, how are you measuring success on this project?
It's something. So we are still in that phase where we're trying to work out how best to do it. We don't know. We're aware that we're green people. We are already interested. We're already engaged with green space. What we're trying to do is it's hard to say it, but we know that we need some sort of quantitative data, because I'm very much about qualitative data. I love the fact that people feel better just from walking in through a meadow or whatever, wherever it is, and that it's improved their day or their month or their, however small it might be. For me, that's huge. However, the people that are making decisions about Blackpool, I suppose, want to see statistics. They want to see data, and we are really aware that we need to secure some sort of way to put that quantitative figure on a person, on their well-being. How has that, access to green space had an impact on their access to healthcare, or their need for support, or their, impacted on antisocial behaviour. So currently, which we are working with, there's so many conversations going on, it's quite hard to keep track of them, but so many different partners that we're trying to find a way to get that figure where one person, it can just, you know, expand into all of these things, all the benefits that it's had having this access to green space. Luckily, there's a research project within Blackpool Council, and they do have seed funding. We've not received it yet, but they are coming to help train us into how we can research better and what information is, you know, what we need to do. It's just something we're trying to work out, because we're not, although we're collecting data and we're collecting people's feedback, it's the statistical stuff that we now need that we can put a value on it. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're trying, and we're certainly getting advice from local authority and from local research projects. We have been in touch with Liverpool University, and we're hoping to have support from a fellow to maybe establish a research project. And again, it's just a longer term thing that we're going to have to work towards.
Thanks, Tara. So we've got a question in the chat from Kira, who said, just wondering how there could be, and if there has been, much inclusion of arts and culture in the strategy. I'm thinking like Left Coast's Wildflower Meadow at the moment, but how could other things be established?
Yeah, so we're very lucky that we have a local organisation called Left Coast, and we're working quite closely with them as well. They are an Arts Council funded project. I did used to work for them, luckily. Luckily for me, I've got some really good connections there. I worked as a gardener with them last year, just before I got this job. I sadly left that job to come to this one. But they are an arts engaged people in place. So they establish art projects based around what people's wants and needs are in their environment. And one of the projects that they have, so over time, their project has developed. It was very much about, it's always been about arts, and it will remain about arts. But what they've realised is this, I suppose, this yearning and this need for green space. So during my work with them last year, we realised that people were really interested in how we can use plants and use resources and use waste to dye things and use them as natural dyes. So they've taken that and that want and that need, and they've now been recruiting for they've commissioned an artist to work on with fabric and how we can carry this on, and so they take those little seeds of interest and they develop it into something wonderful, and they commission artists. One of them was a project that we started in a really rundown area where a pub had been knocked down. We weren't allowed to build anything permanent features. No permanent features were allowed on it, so we did some raised planters. And then put some raspberry canes in. It's a sunflower garden because there's a really big Romanian community there. And now they have developed something which is medicinal. So it was called Medicine in the Rubble. So they started to use pioneer plants, and we're working with them currently on one of their meadows. So they did a thing called Field of Dreams, and it was it's on the outskirts of a very, very large, probably I think it's Blackpool's largest housing estate. Suffers greatly with antisocial behaviour and health needs of people, lots of isolation. But at the front of that, in between quite a busy road and close to our motorway, there is a field that historically has been used for football, isn't really used for football anymore, but quite regularly we'll get tipping on there. Again, the antisocial behaviour, lots of disruptive and destructive use of the green space rather than positive. So they've now taken that green space and they seeded it and they planted, I think it was a bit later than they'd hoped, but I think they started it in at the end of April, and they tilled it and they planted it, and now this most wonderful field of borage and poppy and wheat and cornflowers. There's so many, and when you walk through it, it's incredible. With it's totally alive with pollinators, and the people have received it so well. There was some uncertainty over what it looked like, let's say, but the reception has been amazing. So now we're working with them at the other side of this project towards the end of the year to harvest it. And we're working with them to use the traditional meadow management. So we're going to be mowing it with scythe and hopefully getting people to come and join in. So yeah, we are working really cohesively with that organisation. So although we don't I suppose we're not really the facilitators of these things. We're trying to work alongside other groups and see how we can support them through our funding and through the training opportunities and bringing people together. So Left Coast are doing a wonderful job of doing the actual facilitation of these things. Sorry, I've waffled again.
That's all right. It's really interesting. Thanks, Cara. Laura, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm joining from Morecambe actually, and I'm part of the local Greenpeace group. It all sounds really good, and I think we've got similar things going on with the Eden project. My question is Silicon Sands a completely separate project, or are you linking with that? And is Silicon Sands good environmentally?
So Silicon Sands, it's so new, it's so newly kind of planned that I suppose time will tell. With some of it, we are in talks with. So the guy who has led on Silicon Sands is kind of our project sits partly. It's half with groundwork and it's partly with the council. And the council side of it, the guy who is the strategy guy is also like my project manager's manager. So he really wants us to be involved. He wants it to be a diverse and a green opportunity for Blackpool. I'm not sure how that will look, to be honest with you. I do think time will tell. How things on paper, sometimes the hope of what it will be can sometimes be different. I suppose we can just hope that those things on paper will come to fruition and that they will be what they've promised, and it is going to benefit the town, and it is going to offer greener opportunity for Blackpool. So yeah, I'm afraid it's like a part answer to your question. It's not really my field, but I am aware that there are lots of people that have got the right intentions, and on paper they want it to happen and they want it to do those things. The reality is sometimes, as you're aware, in Morecambe, probably similar, and many other towns, not just in Morecambe, those ideals shift. And in Blackpool, we put in planning, like our tree officer that works in the within the council, she'll put in a plan for green space, to be within building developments. And sadly, those are the first things to go. When budgets are tight and when the plans actually start to develop and they realise that they're not going to meet deadlines or meet funding criteria. It's the hard factor is for us in Blackpool, it's not seen as a priority, and those are the things that we're trying to change. And I'm hopefully this the Silicon Sands and Greenwave project aligning in this way, hopefully that will help them to see that it is crucial. It's not just it can't just be an afterthought or it's okay, we can just knock off that green space, whatever it is. We want those decisions to be different.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, go for it. Keep the green at the top of the list.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, to be fair, we're not making friends in all places at the moment. Let's say we are we're trying to shout as loud as we can. We know we've got 2 years initially, and we're trying to not make things difficult for people. We're just trying to raise that awareness and make people realise it's not something you could just keep fobbing off for another few years. It's something that has to happen now, and these changes have to happen now and have to be implemented for the future. We can't just keep saying, oh, we can't afford it. It's not good enough. And luckily, although we're a small team, we are held with groundwork, which I think they share those same values as us, that those things, then it's not a what if or a maybe. It's a must.
Well,
Yeah,
thanks,
thanks.
Cara. Linda, you've just got your hand up now.
I didn't take my microphone off, did I?
Hello, Linda.
Hi, Cara. Nice to see you again. Thank you for the little bit of promotion there in our courses. So there's a couple of things I wanted to say. So first, just thank you for your talk. It's really interesting. And as you were speaking about, you know, the isolation of the different areas, I was thinking about connectivity. You know, how do you connect the town with those rural areas? And it struck me that Preston has a fantastic resource, which is the Guild Wheel, and the Guild Wheel goes all around the outside of Preston, but it feeds in, and almost like the wheel that, you know, wheel with spokes, and that connects everybody from the town centre to areas outside in a few short miles. I think what they've done there is amazing, and you know, it could be replicated, I guess, if there was the willingness and I guess the money to do it. But yeah, I think connectivity is going to be really important for the future as well, so that wildlife can then get about a bit, as it were.
Yeah, it's something we spoke about, and similarly with like the Stockport interchange and the green pathways that have happened with Cyan Lines in Manchester, and it is something that is on the agenda for Active Blackpool. It's a plan that they have had for active travel anyway for many years. They've just not had the buy-in, unfortunately. And again, it's either what we are working with them. We've been in conversation with them about how we can make those green routes, we can make those travel routes more appealing to people. And there is a map that they created many years ago that we are working with them on to create more green corridors and to link these spaces up and have green crossings. That individually there are so many amazing ideas, and you're absolutely right, Linda, that the connectivity I feel like is crucial. I think for a long time things have been very disjointed in Blackpool. Decisions have been made in silos, and what we're trying to do is bring people together to see if we all work together and we make these decisions differently, like you said, the connection, the impact that's going to have, it would be stupid not to do it. It would be stupid not to join up with people, because it's like it has so many knock-on effects on everybody, and on the town, and on the finances, and on on the strain, on everything. So it is something we're working towards. And obviously, I did mention before about the college course, and Linda that's their course that they've now developed, and it's I think linking up with local authorities and local education establishments and local businesses and local people, and sharing that common vision and developing it together is crucial. You're absolutely right.
And on that note as well, I mean, I don't know if the organiser has my email address, but I'm happy to share that at the end if anybody wants to contact me to find out more about the programme or how we can support any of the work that you do. I'd be absolutely happy to do that. So I can pop that in the chat if that's all right with the group.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Linda. So
Thank
I
you.
think we are coming to the end of our allotted time now. We've got a couple of, I've seen that someone is writing something in the chat, so once I'll read out what you said once you finish writing. Alison, who I think may have left the meeting now, has mentioned, Cara, that Natural England have released a new resource to ensure consistent measurement called Healthy Outdoors. So that's in the chat. And then also
add that if anybody, that is an awesome document, and it's something we've been looking at. We're trying to integrate our kind of data collection with that, because it's so interactive and so beautifully done. I was well impressed when I saw it. It was really good.
I'm going to take a look myself as well. And then Caroline Holden has also said that she has to go, but she's would love to meet up with you and the team. Cara, she's from Community Rail Lancashire, who have 2 Blackpool stations, with a project actually inspired by meeting Annie Hislop in Feb with the chair of the SFLCRP, Tony Ford. So she's given her email address as well in the chat for contact. So hopefully there'll be some nice collaboration that's come out of this this really interesting session. So yeah, and Linda, for everyone, just so you know, Linda's put her email address in the chat, so if anyone wants to take a look at that and send her an email to find out more about their courses, that'd be brilliant. So yeah, thank you everyone again for joining us today. Like I said, it's been great to hear all about your project, Cara, and some really interesting questions and engagement as well with the project. And I feel like hopefully it's sparked a few little conversations and plans for projects in and around Blackpool. Our next Lunch and Learn is in September, so it's an opportunity to wish everyone a lovely summer. Hopefully we might get slightly less hot weather and some rain to give our green spaces a chance to recover. And our next Lunch and Learn is on Thursday the 24th of September, with a theme, which leads on really well from this theme actually. So the impact of voluntary action across the network. So we are putting a call out for any voluntary groups or any projects at work supporting volunteers from across Lancashire that would like to present on their work and how it relates to LancsCan. It would be great to hear from you. So if you contact myself, I'll put my email in the chat, because I don't know whether my email's been in the chat for a while. So I'm just putting my email in now, or you can contact Helen as well, if you'd like to be involved in the next Lunch and Learn. But otherwise, thank you to everyone for joining, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cara. She's gone now.
Thank you, Sam. That was really good.
Yeah, it was really
She
interesting.
did really well. Yeah,
it was great. So yeah, I suppose if we just maybe maybe next month we could just have a catch up about planning for the one in September.
definitely. Yeah,
Sounds
lovely.
good. Cool.
Thank you, Sam. Thank
See
you.
you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.